So, lovely to be with you, Mr. Marcus Watts. How are you, sir?
Very good, thank you very much.
Good.
Very good indeed, cheers.
Very nice to hear. So where did it all begin? For our new followers out there, for Medibaits, tell us a little bit about where this medicated boilie idea come from and where we'd like to see it go, I suppose.
Yeah, it was a need I felt it was a personal need. The fisheries, local initially, on the doorstep, they weren't reaching the full potential with their stock. The stock needed additional feed. But then the idea was it's not just about growing them. We wanted to sort of do them some good. So it was a case of looking at what problems the fish can sort of face going through the whole calendar clock, and then making a boilie that's beneficial for many reasons. So growth is important. You know, all the fishery owners want the fish big. The anglers want the fish big.
Don't we all?
And there's a bit more interest now in buying decent strained fish, and they've got a window when they're younger of maximising growth. So sort of going hand in hand, these fisheries are planning ahead now. Local clubs, syndicates, and so if they're spending the money on the fish, a lot of anglers don't necessarily put enough bait in collectively to grow fish. Plus, they want to catch them.
Cool, yeah.
So we wanted something that wasn't for anglers. It wasn't necessarily an angling bait. It doesn't smell of something pretty. It was designed for the fish. Something that they could almost rely on, and then it's becoming established as a natural food source. So these fish now are accepting it and eating it and continually eating it. Perfect, based on it's doing them some good.
And you touched on there, like anglers putting enough bait into their fisheries. Obviously, coming into this time of year, winter time as well, that drops even more. It goes to PVA bag fishing, doesn't it?
It does. It pincher pellets, things like that. The fish want to eat. They will eat under the ice. We've seen it. We know that. Yeah. But if the food disappears, they will enter a stage of like near hibernation. Yeah. Because the creatures that hibernate is because they stock up and then their food source disappears. Whereas if it's available, then fish will keep eating it.
Going through,
I mean, their digestion slows down. It's down to the temperature of their body, which is the temperature of the water. Of course. But they still will feed. Gain benefit, and especially with the sort of the Medibait idea, because we're trying to get some key elements into the fish that helps them sort of when it comes to breaking dormancy, when the parasite levels go up in the lakes, their need for additional minerals, additional vitamins as well. All of that kicks in where you want them eating that through the winter, because the first big sort of period of them needing a lot of extras is going into spring, developing spawn, but also water and day length goes up.
That was one of my questions to you. I originally assumed it'd be a winterized thing, but you saying to me that February, March time, when they're actually waking up, it can become even more important for them to shift these parasite leeches. And
I mean, every lake, they're all governed to a certain degree by temperature, but also, say the day length wakes things up. It can be freezing cold, but activity suddenly happens. It's because the days have got longer. Okay. So temperature is only a small part of it. You can't look at a thermometer and go, the fish will start feeding, because all of nature wakes up as the days get longer. So that is a February, March. Then there's so many things happening that the fish requires. The females, the spawn is developing. It's been lying dormant and shrunken, if you like. It begins to expand. That is all of that expansion and egg production is being drawn from the fish's body. You know, that it's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah, of course.
Now, if there's not a lot of food there, external food, then the fish is depleting itself to produce its spawn. So it's looking to put back protein. Key thing on that is protein, vitamins, minerals, salts. So
and that is pretty much the makeup of what you've designed here.
It's designed for sustained growth. We haven't just sort of created an oily trout pellet in boilie form where they're going to get fat.
Yeah.
That's not the right way to do it. You know, that's too short term, not necessarily that good on the long term health of the fish. You want a steady, sustained, digestible protein that the fish are comfortable with. You don't want excess protein in there that they can't deal with, because all they do then is pass it out into the water. Then you've got enriched protein levels, which creates ammonia.
Right, okay.
And then if you create ammonia because of uneaten food or passed through undigested food, the key thing about ammonia, their appetite goes down, and you then defeat the whole object of trying to make them eat.
Achieve, yeah.
So it's
very clever, yeah.
It's all based on fish farming, which was my original sort of college background at the College of Agriculture, Hampshire. And it's not, you've got to take your angling hat off for this, because the angler wants the quick result.
Yeah.
They might want it to smell nice. They all love it like that.
Yeah.
But this is nothing to do with that.
No.
This is about
The
year
fish needing
in,
it.
year out, adding a natural food source to the fish that's not going to suddenly disappear, dry up, fluctuate.
Yeah.
And then they come to rely on it.
And people, I think when I first sort of started speaking to you, I was worried about like a price point of this to get it into fisheries and things like that. But the reason why you can keep the cost down is because the expensive stuff in a boilie is actually the flavour and stuff like that.
It's the fancy bits.
Yeah.
The fancy bits can cost a lot. They can be the dearest thing. Literally, the liquid flavouring. If you want, a Scopex or a squid or whatever, you're paying a lot of money per litre just for a smell.
Yeah.
There's no nutrition in the smell. You don't need that smell to attract the fish to eat the boilie either.
No. And the garlic side does that anyway.
Yeah, definitely garlic. But also every ingredient has got its own natural smell to the fish as it's breaking down. Each part, everything's got a smell. It might not be the sort of powerful smell it through the bag, creamy smell that an angler wants out of his boilie, but again we're veering off from that. We are making a feed. They don't put artificial smells in pellet for fish farming because it's an unnecessary expense. And a lot of angling baits, you do want something that's a bit complex. So you want something unique for the recognition. So you might end up combining 2 or 3 liquid sort of smells, a powder. You can put all these things in, and suddenly, 50% of the cost of a bait can be in the smell. Yeah. And if you're buying some people, some companies, I guess, they go so to town on flashy packaging that there's a massive impact. There could be £1 in the bag,
of course,
with a label on the front, a label on the back, all full colour. The bit that goes in the bin is another £1. And again, we're not trying to attract anyone. It's not to sort of stand out on a shelf. No. This is for the fishery owners and the managers to understand. Yeah. A plain bag, label that says what it has to say.
Well, why I'm sitting with you here today is that was the big pull for me, owning and running fisheries, being able to give an element of it to the members to use to feed the fish as well as me feed it again, so they become very accustomed to it. And personally, I know we're not aiming it towards the angler, but personally I'm actually looking forward to actually fish with it,
fish over.
Especially on
in the vicinity of it and over
in my own lakes, when I know that they've established them as a food source, then I don't fish very much, so it'd be nice to...
They'll rip the bottom up for it.
Yeah. We'll touch on that one that you said to me, so we've only gone local...
That West Country, we've only... This literally has been kept on the doorstep for quite a few years. The first sort of syndicate that trialled it was 5 or 6 years ago. There's an interesting story off the back of that one. And then a year ago, West Country Angling Club took their first batch, 1/4 ton. We dropped it off. It was for one water that they'd invested in some young new fish. Nice fish, I think. I think they were sort of low doubles. Anyway, I didn't hear back, which sometimes you hear back all the time, sometimes you don't. So I was curious about how it had gone down, and then they've recently contacted us again, absolutely full of praise, and ordered and increased the order. And I'd said to them, how are you doing it? And they were baiting from a boat because they were feeding through the winter. So the edges were a bit too shallow, too much bird life. So I did say to them, it can be, it's not always best to bait the same spot all the time while anglers are there, because once you create a little hot spot, it becomes pressured with other people fishing into it. And then you don't want the fish backing off from a safe sort of food sauce. So he said, oh no, he said, we started moving, we put a whole sack in, he said, and the water went brown. He said, we haven't seen that in the winter. A big brown stain where the feed was. He said, so we had a little chat and then we went up the other end of the lake. We put a sack in up there a week or two later. He said, the water went brown up there. He said, the fish, he said, every time we put a sack in somewhere different, fish followed. It wasn't the weather, it wasn't the spot they baited. They followed for this food source that was safe, new, and it's what the fish wanted
and what they need.
And then it turned out that obviously with angling trials right through the winter, the fish they bought, they were 3 to 4 pound up on average. They were over the moon. It did exactly what they wanted. Where we touched on the garlic and the fact that it does knock off parasites, they do not like garlic. The garlic, we use two forms. We use the powder within the base mix powder, and we use the garlic oil as part of the liquid. So you've got two different sides to the garlic then. You've got a releasing attractor, but you've also got it remaining locked into that boilie, so it's internally taken, digested, and it enters the bloodstream in effect, because the parasites that are bloodsuckers are the ones that drop off. But we've also had reports that gill parasites, people have tested it in aquariums with infected fish, and their fish have had gill fluke on them and all sorts, and then they cleared up. This has been little fish in match fisheries, they've crumbled some in, and it's basically the introduction of the garlic in together balanced with the minerals that we add. We up the calcium, but that's for another reason. That's to repair damage quicker. So this is why the feeding period isn't just a little short one, because then you're sort of knocking off parasites when they break dormancy, keeping the parasites off. But then there's the spawning, there's the moving into the shallow water. They knock off scales, they break fins. All those things halt growth on a carp. When it's damaged, it repairs before it continues growing. So if you can speed up the healing process, you speed up the growing process. And then
win-win.
Down here in the West Country, the water's notoriously soft, very low in calcium. You don't get anything in the kettles ever, nothing clogs up your washing machines. So it's an element that's missing, or it's in a very low level naturally. So one of my first baits that we created for anglers, I knew that if a carp's deficient in any animal, but if a carp was deficient in something, you only had to put that one item in a food source, and they, through need, would come and eat it. So it's as simple as that. So you whack a load of calcium into an environment that's deficient, and there's a damaged carp or a broken carp or a carp that's just low in its natural levels, it will find that food source and eat it to replenish.
Excellent.
So we keep the calcium levels boosted within the feed, just to help with that background of tissue damage, or like physical damage to the bones, the fins, the rays, the scales.
And to a fishery owner or fishery management, it's paramount, isn't it? And you always... Well, I learned that about the healing process before it would grow when we last spoke, which is another thing that drew me to it. Crazy that even occurs, but they're just clever animals, aren't they? They know what they need, and we'll look for it. I think as well, while we're on that, I think the reason why you probably could have made a pellet, maybe tell me otherwise, but the reason why we've gone for a 20mm boilie is for those fish to be able, for it to be in the water longer, for the fish to be able to find it. I think that's really important, because I always feed these pellets, and with your crayfish, your smaller fish, like when it starts to break down, are them carp really getting the full benefit of 25 kilo sack of pellet? They're not, are they?
The point was, let's make it as selective as possible. And so you've got a target audience, and it's the carp, and it's the bigger carp or your average carp. But you don't want to waste any money on skimmer bream, roach rudd. They're not really the point of this. It's the pellet starts off at whatever size you put in. It's obviously softening. They're getting rolled around. They're getting smaller and smaller. The moment bream will take them anyway at 10, 12 mil. Skimmers and tiny roach will be nudging them around, picking bits off. Carp will come in and they'll get some at the end of it, But unless you've got a very rare environment of only big carp, like you say, a percentage of every pellet sack you throw in is gone.
Yeah, well, that's why I like the idea, because fisheries across the country are going to have a mixed species, so that's targeting them. But obviously, in a pond or a fish growing environment, well, to me, they're just the thought of them sucking in a 20mm bit of goodness instead of loads of little things.
It's about calorific as well. Yeah, the effort to eat loads of little bits is more than sucking in one. But also, we touched on it earlier about not polluting your own lake, but protein and things uneaten, undigested, affects water quality. So if you've just put a big bed of pellet out and there's crumbs and dust coming off it, a lot of that won't then be sucked in by our bigger carp and digested. It'll just end up in the silt as uneaten protein. So the knock-on of that fine fine covering of powder.
So when you're feeding a lot
it's
of that,
uneaten. So at least with a boilie stays together. People talk about how quick does your boilie break down? But you drop one in some water, they don't actually break down to dust unless you've specifically designed them to, which normally means no eggs and not cooked. But they're paste balls that are dried. But once you boil it, you've made a protein chain. So they'll soften, they swell up, they soften, but the whole point is we want it to stay together. We want it to be that mouthful. So our 20 mils, if the fish are spread out, and they don't come across them for a while, 3 or 4 days later, you've still got a soft 20 mil there waiting to be eaten.
And also you can play around with a boilie anyway, can't you? If you have got a pond or whatever with smaller fish, put them through a grinder and feed them slightly smaller, can't you?
You could smash some of them up.
Exactly, like you would do in your own fishing, I suppose.
But even a broken boilie stays as a broken boilie. It doesn't just suddenly become a little pile of dust that just gets washed away with a flick of a tail. And that's the whole point with feed. You want it to reach that target. Whatever your fish is that you want to eat it, you want an intact item there. Because we say we want to get that garlic powder into them. We want to get the mineral supplement, the calcium supplement. If it was all just down as fine crumb, they would never be able. You wouldn't be able to guarantee that all the bits that were important would end up in the fish. And hence why a boilie is a way of bringing together in the right levels all the bits that we want to make sure go into our carp.
Perfect. Well, I think obviously it's the start of the journey, other than a couple of local ones, really. And with what we're trying to achieve to get it a bit more nationwide and do our part, shall we say? Because we certainly feel like it's helping fisheries, helping the fish, helping the environment. It's a win-win. That's how we certainly feel. We've got you've got a little bit of a case study that we're going to keep an eye on with the BCSG waters. One of their lakes that they've chose to feed. So that's something that maybe we can bring a bit of news to in the future. And
that'd be a nice one to keep
an eye on, wouldn't it? And
keep the continuity going through.
We both know the lakes very,
both of the fisheries that they sort of run and control are on the feed programme. Just literally received this autumn, ready to begin. So that'll be good. And then there was that early, very first customer that we had, the syndicate down here. The interesting part of that was they've stuck with it religiously. They fed it every month, year in, year out. I think it was been about year 2, maybe start of year 3. We all hear that lakes have mysterious uncaught fish that are nearly always common.
Of course,
Out of the blue, there was barely a 20 in this lake, and then a £29 common came out. Not on the feed, it just came out in a boilie. And it was a legit, genuine, unknown, unlanded 29 pounder in a lake that's been a syndicate for probably 25 years or more. Since then, it's now a catchable fish. It's been out 3-4 times on growing up, and a mirror's come up and matched it and gone past it. That was a known fish that went from 17 into the 30s only in the last few years. And then
do you think that's the association of a boilie then, the round objects, and getting goodness from it? It
was, I think that fish, that big common, like I say, unlanded, shall we say, till £29, had lived on naturals, and that's how it got to £29. Suddenly, through continuity, a boilie then was another natural food source to that lake.
Perfect.
Because it was there whenever they wanted to eat. So a fish that would have initially maybe ignored the little scattering, suddenly through one want or another, normally it's when the food source they prefer seasonally either just fizzles out, disappears or fluctuates, then fish that have relied on, say, snails, suddenly there's a crash in the snail population, they've got to eat something. And it took a couple of years, but I'm sure that because the feed boilie down there is a natural food to that lake, that fish then suddenly got turned on to boilies as a viable thing to eat. And even though the anglers were using whatever chosen boilie they wanted, it was enough that that fish then became catchable. And it was unusual. That was really unusual.
Nice feather in the cap, I like to think.
When they said about it, they were like, "You're not going to believe it, but this has come out," and it's like, wow, been there all along. And now it's added another catchable fish, and it was one of the biggest fish in the lake. I think it was the fishery record when it came out. Yeah. But the growth of the others, those lads, the highlight of their season used to be a 20-pound fish. Now apparently you do a session, you really hope to get a 20-pound fish each visit, not once a year. And just the old fish have come up, but the new fish, the old fish won't put on any length, but they'll get deeper and thicker. But the young fish, they have still got that sort of, I think personally, they've got a good sort of 6-7 years of optimum growth, and then slower, steadier growth. And you want to see true growth. You want your fish getting a little bit longer.
Yeah, they're the ones we like.
Yeah. As long as they get a bit longer, the proportion of every other bit of the body is putting on weight. A fish that stays the same length can get fatter when there's food, but if the food source disappears, it'll drop back being thinner again. Okay. So you get a weight fluctuation, but not growth. If you or I get a bit fatter over Christmas, we haven't grown. Yeah. We've got heavier, but we didn't grow. But when we were younger and eating like a horse, we were growing. Yeah. And then by growing, we got heavier. Yeah. And that happens with fish. One thing that sunk home years ago, chatting with BCSG fish recorder, sort of linked to Ashley Poole, and he said the most important statistic for him was the length, not the girth. He said it irons out anglers who their scales might not be accurate. Yeah. They might like to weigh them heavy. They might weigh them light. He said if they're all the same length and they're basically the same girth, that's the true measure of how your fishery's doing. Really interesting,
that is.
Because
a lot of other anglers, perch anglers, they measure a length, don't they?
Yeah, it's a thing now.
That's probably it.
Yeah, they literally are, and it's accurate.
Strange carp anglers that don't do it, isn't it?
It is. It's only
your bass and stuff.
All our bass is length, like you say, pike and pike perch predators. Yeah. They're going by the centimetre these days, and then they add the weight as a secondary. But and the targets, they've got targets on length as well, and it does iron out inaccuracy, should we say, in the weighing process for one reason or another. But for measuring what's going on, it's a useful statistic for a fishery owner, manager, anyone who's curious.
And a lot of fishery managers are. That's the joy of doing what they do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Watching them grow from small to big. And you talk about, I suppose, you hear, shall I say, that pellet-fed fish, that kind of, induced weight, overfed, not the right environment, sort of in smaller areas, can leak into our lakes now. And I think it's important that we want to get this as far spread as nationwide as possible with the right. We're doing it for the right. You've created it for the right reasons. We're doing it for the right reasons. I've certainly saw just from a few of our chats the benefit of what this could do for carp up and down the country, and I think that's a nice thing. You know, if you can get your anglers using it or feeding it, should we say, along with other bait, then at least 20, 30, 40% of what's going in your lake is really good for the fish.
Definitely.
And if it's at a price point where the people that don't want to spend £12, £13 a kilo on a bag of bait, at least it's not your real like hard crap that you can get in Europe that's just cheap. You know, people are using it, as well as in regards to the fishery managers, they're using it, it's all going into the lake, and you know, as you've mentioned now, the huge benefits of it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not being able to offer it at a low price point because it's a load of rubbish.
No.
It's a case of it's been scientifically created at a point where it's not too expensive against a pellet. And then again, we've touched on the benefits of why the boilie works.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I mean, it gives you the control. You buy X amount of kilos, those carp are going to eat pretty much those kilos.
Yeah.
Then you get a conversion ratio where a percentage of what they've eaten becomes body weight. And then you can look across the population of carp you think you've got, and you could say, right, collectively, we've fed all winter. This collective population of carp have just grown 200 pound in weight. Now they won't all grow the same amount. There's dominant fish. There's fish that sort of are up the other end or whatever. But that improvement, then you've increased that biomass in your lake with the fish you want to increase it by, which is the target fish that we all want to catch. We want them looking immaculate. You know, healthy, heavier.
That's you're doing right by the fish, aren't you? As a fishery owner, you're doing the right thing by the fish. The livestock, I think that's what I've personally learned over the years I've been doing it, to manage them on a kind of livestock basis.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't feed them rubbish, would you? You
want them
as big and as beautiful as possible. And that's
I mean, I had a thing in my head going back a few years with there was sort of instant fisheries popping up. You know, they dig a hole, and as soon as it's full of water, there ain't even a bush and the fish are in. And I likened it to a true farmer who cares about livestock wouldn't do that. You wouldn't strip all the topsoil off a field down to bare clay and throw a herd of cows in it.
Exactly, yeah.
You just would not do that. And because it's underwater, people thought, it's out of sight, out of mind, it must be all right, we can have anglers in here tomorrow. And they still pop up. They're awful. Luckily, there's not so many now. They're maturing a bit.
Yeah.
But the end result could be achieved so much quicker by just being a bit patient, enriching the waters, letting nature take its course, get a food source in there. Don't even stock fish for a little while. You know, let that piece of water sort of sustain life.
Yeah.
And
do it the right way.
Yeah, do it the right way.
Yeah, well, I think certainly for me, getting into this time of year, I've always looked for more a winterised pellet or something. But it does get to that time where it becomes more of a flake maize kind of thing for me, or up until now. And I just think that I'm excited to keep a higher protein food going in with these benefits.
Yes, definitely.
It's going to be exciting for me to get Toaster and a few other lakes on it and feed it through the winter, because I've always noticed if I didn't feed, whether it's maize, whatever, there'll always be those few that pop up come spring. I think if you can continue to get them feeding and moving throughout the colder months, then there's less mortality come spring ultimately.
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation. That and it's understandable, isn't it? They're not depleting themselves, they're actually sort of maintaining, if not sort of improving their internal health. I've 100% noticed it.
If the years that I didn't at the start of my journey, there was, as soon as we started to feed it in the winter, keep it trickling in, they seem to be a lot more healthier. So I think that's what we're trying to achieve here, really, isn't it? It's getting it nationwide, and giving fish exactly what they want to be able to grow, protect themselves. Heal, protect and grow is what we've gone for, and I think that suits down to the ground, really.
And it does help angling. I mean, you get I've had feedback from some of the busier fisheries, and it's like, if an angler's not catching, they'll go, it's because you've thrown too much in, and you've just never heard such rubbish in your life, because once they're feeding, they don't stop feeding. It makes them catchable. It doesn't make them uncatchable. You know, you don't need the identical hook bait out there. You could put a tiger nut, a bit of bread flake over the top. If you're an observant angler and the water's coloured up, those fish won't turn their nose up. They'll just clear out what they want to eat and then carry on. So I think it improves captures, because especially winter captures and early spring, because fish that would have potentially stopped fishing and just laid up, getting covered in leeches, they've been kept active and hungry. So the fact that some feed's gone in is a benefit to your angling customer.
obviously quite shocked of how low a price point we can get it to, and what goes in it that's good, because we've got it at that price point. I think people worry, don't they, that there's stuff in there that there shouldn't be, but you're quite unique at your unit where you've got your own mill.
Yes, yeah. So normally what costs a lot is buying in sacks of unknown ingredients that have already been ground to flour or powder. We invested in a mill, so I can start with raw peas, raw grains, whole grains I should say, and then we can piece together what would be known in the old days as bird foods, but we're making them from scratch. That's a game changer, because you're not buying from a carp ingredient supplier, you're buying on the agricultural feed market, and there's you're right back to the source virtually, other than the farmer who grew it in the first place. Yeah. So then we literally have got key recipes. Different seeds and grains have different properties, different nutrition. There's a lot of good things in soya, but not so much in sort of soya flour is over the top. You want to mill your own soya to like a granular form. Sunflower hearts, we use the whole seed and they're in there. Wheat, barley, maize, all these things come together, but they all go in a big hopper. We push the mill, it runs independently while we're working, and then we've got a fantastic base ingredient there to then add the fish meals, the blood, the binders, the egg powder, the protein, the other sort of the animal protein sources rather than the vegetable protein sources. Yeah. But it was always important to us not to overcharge, because I want it used and I want it fed. And so it's not looking for a greedy margin. It's like we want this out there. Off the back of it, the baits that we make and that other companies make, the anglers will buy bait because they're catching carp and they're catching more carp. So there's a long-term knock-on in this project, and that's pretty much how we can keep the costs nice, realistic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very unique to what most people can offer, isn't it? And can go in there, how you can play around with it to get it to where it is today.
Yeah.
I think that's perfect, mate. I really we appreciate your time. I'm excited to see where we can take it. I think it's nice to know that between us we're backing something that's really, really good for the carp and the fish that we all love to fish for. I feel like we're putting something back into it, as well as as well as trying to get it nationwide as a business. But it's
both of us at our heart, we want the fish healthy.
Yeah,
it's a hobby, but it's a lifestyle. It's our living.
It's a living for the guys that are going to be potentially buying it, as well as I think that's really important.
Oh god, yeah. You've got an asset that they've invested in the asset. They've got the fish.
Yeah,
you want to do your best you can by the fish.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't you? You want them to reach their potential within whatever lake you've got.
I think it's something like we've touched on, the targeting of the size of the item of food. Personally, I'll probably feed it with something else as well in the summer. It's not just to completely get rid of a pellet feed or a maize feed, but it's a very, very nice supplement, I believe, to be given to fish.
It's filling in, definitely, if you want to mix it in, if you want vast quantities of feed, if it requires it, or just mixed in with say, flake maize is good. Micronizing is brilliant, makes it more digestible than just ordinary raw maize, if you like. Yeah. Mixing it in there, the fact that the feed boilie has got those key elements in addition that they still need, so you're getting it as part of a diet. The fish will have the lot, and get the benefit from that without a doubt.
Well, exciting times. I'm sure we'll be picking your brain at a later date at some point. We've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And let's see where we can take this Medicated for the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.